I can see clearly now, the rain is gone.
Good afternoon from Castle Goring, from Mickey and from me. Well, I have a treat in store for you. Towards the end of this video, I have a house guest who is going to tell you all about the time a certain duke tried to kill him, quite literally. But I'm going to save that for the last. And we are going to plunge in with basically questions surrounding the Duchess of Cambridge's birthday and various mischiefs that certain people who, shall we say, will, for legal reasons, remain nameless, but whose agents have been acting on their behalf to try to damage the position of the Duchess of Cambridge. So, first question is from Dennis King. Dear Lady C, I just saw the 3 pictures released for the Duchess of Cambridge's 40th birthday. Wow! How regal and beautiful she looks. Truly these images capture the class, elegance and demeanour of a future queen. The weather forecast for Montecito today is mostly sunny, but I wouldn't rule out a local thunderstorm. Oh, Dennis King, I have absolutely no idea what you're talking about. I mean, I can't imagine why any resident of Montecito would be upset, can you? Well, the portraits of the Duchess of Cambridge are very interesting because it's 3 separate portraits. And it's very unusual to have portraits where it's left profile, centre, right profile. But they are very evocative of what Cecil Beaton did for the Queen Mother and for Princess Margaret's portraits when she was young. If you refer back to, in fact, as I'm thinking of it, the cover of my Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother book has the Cecil Beaton portrait of Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, when she was Queen Elizabeth, in profile. So they're very classical. They are making the link between the past and the present. What is very interesting from my point of view is that the Beaton portraits harkened back to the past as well, because King George VI specified that Cecil Beaton should be influenced by the Winterhalter portraits of Queen Victoria, so that Queen Elizabeth, who was rather plump, would look romantic, and she was rather short, so it would add height because she could have massive high heels underneath her huge crinolined evening dresses. And romanticism and links to the past were the order of the day in the 1930s and the 1950s when those portraits were done, and they are the order of the day now that they have been done. So I think that the portraits have a message. As for any activity in Montecito, you can imagine the fury, I'm sure. Nicholas Voyage says, "Hello, Lady C. Hope all is well. Just curious to know if you might be able to discuss the portraits commemorating Catherine's 40th birthday. Why do two of the portraits not reveal her stunning beauty that we are all so familiar with? Of the three, I must say that the portrait that captures her profile in black and white is the most flattering, as I think it also honours royal portraits of the past. You're absolutely right there. Why would her hairstyle be such a far cry from the glossy waves and elegant updos that she usually sports? If I may, I'll answer that at this point. They want an updated image while being traditional. And they also want movement and vitality. And the way to get it is to have her hair literally blowing in the wind. So that's why that was done. It's artistry and artifice married to create a certain sort of immediacy and modernism while being contemporary. Just curious. And who might be responsible for literally fading Kate's beauty out of the portrait where she wears the red gown? Kate stuns no matter the occasion. I just cannot understand how this could have happened in this portrait. Thank you, Lady Z, for all that you share with your viewers. Look forward to your next show. Lots of love to you and Mickey. Rita from Los Angeles. Rita from Los Angeles? I have to tell you, I agree with you. I think the portraits are very striking. I think they are very elegant. I think they are very classical. And I think not one of the three of them actually captures Catherine Cambridge's natural beauty. I think they're overlit. Speaking as somebody who used to model and who has been in front of a camera now for over 50 years, when you overlight something, you blanch out a lot of the character. And I think that is actually what has happened here. I actually think they are stunning pictures. I can see why people like them. I can also see why you have reservations about them, because I do too as well. You know, it's always a mistake when you improve to such an extent that you actually lessen the natural attributes of someone. And Catherine Cambridge is a naturally very good-looking girl. She's overlit. It's overdone. She has a stunning figure. The red dress is striking. The composition of all three, if viewed left, center, and right, the composition is very good. I have to tell you, I agree with you. I don't like that red picture. You know, it's, as I've said about a portrait of mine that is a stunning portrait. I said it's a fabulous picture. When the National Portrait Gallery wanted me to leave it to them in the early 80s, I refused to, because it's such a beautiful picture. It's just not me. And I think two of those three pictures, well, one of those three pictures really, the one with the red dress, just doesn't capture Catherine at all. The other two, a bit more, but none of them does her justice. That's my opinion. Jessie Mackenzie says, Today there must be a great deal of gazing into a mirror and asking the mirror who is the fairest of them all. We all know who that would be. As Catherine, Duchess of Cambridge, celebrates her 40th birthday in a quiet and subdued manner, in keeping with the quiet but accomplished woman that she is, I wonder whether me again is taunting her husband Harry, wanting to hear from him that she is the most beautiful, accomplished princess of them all. I wonder whether Harry is allowed to contact his sister-in-law to wish her a happy 40th birthday. Whether he looked back nostalgically at the threesome Harry, William and Catherine had become after Kate and William married, and before that woman had come onto the scene. I even recall Harry saying of Catherine that she was the sister he never had. Amazing the wedge one evil person can drive into one's precious relations. Happy birthday to Her Royal Highness, the Duchess Catherine. Well, Jessie Mackenzie, that's lovely and very interesting. And, you know, what can I say? I mean, yeah. I think actually Meghan is most likely looking in the mirror saying, mirror, mirror on the wall, why is everybody being so nice about Catherine's portraits when they don't capture her natural beauty? And the bad fairy is behind her saying, well, Megsie baby, when your portraits are done, they don't capture your natural beauty either, because you don't have natural beauty. What they do is enhance your artificial beauty. And Meghan says, shut up, bad fairy. I don't want to hear the truth. Well, my understanding is that there are serious problems between Montecito and Britain. Very serious problems. I need to be really careful what I say here, because I don't want to give too much away, and I certainly don't want to give anybody an inkling as to who might have told me what and how much I actually do know. But what I would say is there are serious problems that persist. The situation is so confused and so push and pull, and so 1 minute it's X and the next it's Y. It is absolute turmoil and havoc. I also understand that Catherine, who tries to play peacemaker, has had a very limited success. William has the measure of his sister-in-law. And the reality is that the best way to play that situation, and I now speak from experience, is to recognize the beast that you're dealing with and treat it accordingly. You push your hand in the lion's mouth at your peril. It is much better to be out of the lion's yard and let the lion roar wherever else it wants to. I will continue with the next question, because I don't want to say so much that I give the game away, so to speak. But equally, I want to say just enough that those of you who can read between the lines will hear what I'm saying and understand where I'm coming from and where things are going to. Because, the fact of the matter is, for all the desire to have smoother sailing, smooth sailing is never guaranteed when there's a hurricane whipping up around you. Hello, Lady C and Mickey. Mickey, Country Life says hello. Any truth to the news of the Harkles selling their mansion in Montecito? Running out of money, are they? Well, over the Christmas-New Year season, we had some very interesting conversations here. I had a house full of guests, some of whom are really rather well connected and know what's going on and have their fingers very firmly on the pulse. Some of whom are very experienced in certain matters. And one of my house guests made the very valid point, and has made it before incidentally, that the acquisition of the house in Montecito was actually a very clever financial move. And Harry and Meghan's game plan, or certainly Meghan's game plan, has always been to buy the house cheaply and flip it expensively. So the house was reduced significantly from however many million to, I think it was 14 million, from about 20-something million. And they were hoping that they would be able to flip it on the back of their great success as their Royal Highnesses, the Emperor and Empress of the United States of America and the rest of the world. Well, their game plan has come slightly awry in many ways, because the problem with making yourself as unpopular and notorious as they have made themselves is they might be able to cut little deals with Netflix and Spotify and Better Up and Better Down and Better Horizontal rather than vertical, and better everything as long as it's at the expense of someone else. But that does not enhance their prestige. That does not inflate the value of the house beyond what it would ordinarily be worth. Nobody's interested in buying a house from a notoriety and saying, oh, the house belonged to such and such. Everybody's interested in buying a house for its true value, and then they'll pay a premium if it's the King of whatever, or Elizabeth Taylor's house when she was a huge star. But evidently also the house has gone down in value to 9-point-something million, which has erased their investment in the house. There's also the supposedly great funds that have come in from various sources, none of which I understand have come in to anywhere near the extent that they would like you to believe. And therefore, to an extent, it would appear that they are, if not yet a busted flush, getting to the point. There's also another consideration when dealing with the couple. Harry and Meghan are constantly throwing out red herrings just to keep themselves topical. Selling the house, is this another red herring? possibly moving back to England. Is this another red herring? Going to buy a property in Norfolk. Is that another red herring? I mean, why would Harry and Meghan want to buy a house in Norfolk near William and Catherine when relations are strained in a very painful way? And my understanding is they're never likely to improve to the extent that the harmony that prevailed prior to Meghan's existence in the family will ever be restored. I think we need to take all of these claims and all of these latest narrative variations with pinches of salt. But the one I would say doesn't need to be taken with a pinch of salt is they're nowhere near as well off as they would like you to believe. And yes, they most likely are starting to suffer financially. Yeah. Yana Ograka says, Dear Lady C, I have a dark suspicion the Duke and Duchess of Unsuccess, that's very droll, are really planning to regain their lost fame by moving back to the UK, at least and especially for the Platinum Jubilee year. They will pretend nothing happened, speak and write words, and play on heartstrings, and the cost of living will be much lower for them in the UK. What do you think? Thank you. Well, they certainly have an uphill struggle, because not only do they have to contend with the opprobrium that they have invited from their circle and from the British people, but they also have to contend with the suspicion that is going to follow them like a bad stench hereafter. But they need to come up with a new game plan, because the old game plan has been shown to be a total failure. My understanding is they are hunkered down, not always happily and not always harmoniously, trying to figure out the best way to strategize. Well, one of them, my understanding is rather more eager to strategize, to have her ambitions realized than the other. However, when you're addicted to ecstasy, it's very difficult to do without ecstasy. Even when your ecstasy has started to become misery. The fact of the matter is, Harry and Meghan have destroyed the trust that anybody had in them. You can't play the Judas card and expect to be trusted. Some of the Judas cards that they have played, or they have had played on their behalf, or their supporters have played on their behalf, have been so injurious and so vicious and so malignant that it is very unlikely that they will ever be trusted with even a $2 bill ever again. Certainly, I don't think he's going to be trusted as long as she's around. You know, their supporters, and I need to be very careful what I'm saying for legal reasons, their supporters have gone to great lengths recently to try to revive poisonous old rumours that were set in circulation by their people about which I'm choosing my words very carefully. Meghan and Harry have played Romeo and Juliet. Look, we're so in love. We're so wonderful. We're just so marvellous. We can't even be separated for 2 seconds. We've got to hold each other's hands. And whenever he tries to get away, the Markle claw grabs him like a vice. All to convey the sentiment of great love. Well, it's been my experience that whenever people go to such lengths to convey great love, it's usually because the love doesn't really exist at all. At least on one side it doesn't. But that's just been my experience. Never been proven wrong, but then I'm only 72, and I don't have that much experience of life, just a very great deal. So maybe somebody's going to prove me wrong. Maybe they'll prove me wrong. Somehow I doubt it. But there's also a very calculated and vicious scheme at work to denigrate William and Catherine by making Harry and Meghan into the perfect foils. Oh, we love each other so much, we'd never look at anybody else ever. And then to invent vicious rumours about other royals. I don't need to say any more, and I trust people to an extent know what I'm talking about. If you don't, I suppose I will have to readdress the subject. But to put it mildly, I think it's been a study in treachery that Harry and Meghan's supporters would have tried to call into question the undeniably happy and loving relationship of his brother and sister-in-law. You know, people can forgive an awful lot, but treachery of that magnitude is not so easily forgiven and certainly never forgotten. Quert Y says, question 4, darling Lady C. I have read that Harry and Meghan's charity are not so well. Only raised £36,681 in the last year, while a fabulous 11-year-old boy in a tent managed to raise over £107,000, and a cat sanctuary managed to raise more than the Sussexes, being £38,235. So it would seem that Harry and Meghan's plan for a world-dominating charity are adrift and delusionary. Evidently, they are far more popular in their own fantasies than actual real people know them to be. Would you agree? Thank you for each and every one of your videos. I always wonder what that sound is. Then I realize it's one of your charming, marvellous clocks chiming in the background. Yes, it's a grandfather clock that my son Misha gave me for Christmas 2 years ago. And I just love it. I'm very sentimentally attached to the presents that my children especially give me, but also my loved ones give me. Sometimes they can even be in bad taste. Not that the clock was in bad taste, and in fact my children always give me presents in good taste. But every now and then I get something from someone and it's not in such great taste. But I don't care. It's the sentiment that counts. Well, yes, RQL is a vehicle. There are sound reasons, as I have said before, to keep the figures below $50,000, because then they don't have to reveal anything. It just sails through. There are all sorts of questions asked about where did money from the Diana Trust go to when it was handed over to Harry and then to Travelist, and then Travelist ceased to become a charitable enterprise and became a private company, blah-de-blah-de-blah. Everything with Harry and Meghan is seriously opaque and seriously mysterious, but we are supposed to believe that they are wonderful human beings who have dedicated their lives to the betterment of humanity. Oh, Mickey, don't be mean. Mickey said 95% to me and 5% to you. Mickey, you're being mean. I will also say, while we're on the subject of charities, that a charity that I am the patron of, Many Tears, it's a charity in Wales for the rehoming of dogs. And when we had that storm a few weeks ago, the roof blew off one of the buildings, and the public rallied to the tune of donating, in a matter of days, £60,000 to get the roof rebuilt. So if anybody has a few spare coins going and would like to donate to Many Tears, it's a wonderful charity. It rehouses dogs. And that was an outstanding success. The British people stepped up to the plate and gave. When things like that happen, you realize how really wonderful humanity can be. And then, when you see this nonsense about Harry and Meghan and their maneuverings and how they play the system, very disheartening, very disheartening. Nike London says, I heard that Meghan and Harry have thrown CBS under the bus. I read that they felt like they were duped into the interview like Diana was by the BBC. Such victims. It said that they were in a bad place and CBS put pressure on them as they wanted a royal prize interview and TV ratings. If that is true and from their PR company, then Oprah will not be happy. What do you think? Oh, Mickey, come and console Motty. Wake up and console Motty. Motty has to cry on Megsy Baby's behalf. Poor Megsy Baby was pressurized by that big bad Oprah into telling a whole load of lies. Poor Meghan. Poor Meghan. Wicked Oprah. Telling lies. All for the benefit of CBS. Because Megsy and H are such noble, self-sacrificing creatures that they had to, Oprah came to their wedding. Oprah was a stranger, but she came to their wedding. The wedding that they couldn't ask her own family to. But Oprah was so kind and generous that she came to their wedding and they had to repay her. Yes, they did. Oh, Maggie, Megsie. My heart breaks for Megsie. Have you ever heard such a crock of rubbish in your life? They were pressurized. By whom? I would say by what? The desire for fame and fortune. Quite frankly, I don't really blame Oprah for the pathetic performance that she put up, because she's a businesswoman. She's not really a journalist. She's a businesswoman and she's an entertainer. And she clearly has no reverence for the truth. And it's all about entertainment. And she provided a fantastic show. What? What a show. What? Oh, somebody would bring up the way a baby might look. Wasn't that unnatural? Gosh, nobody ever discusses how a baby's going to look. Never. What? No. I don't respect Oprah as an interviewer because her performance was beyond inadequate. It was reprehensibly disgusting. But in terms of entertainment and in terms of being a very good cipher for dollar bills, she did a sterling job. Harry and Meghan are adults. Even if they were children, children know the difference between good and bad and the truth and a lie. Children know it. How is it that two adults batting 40 were struggling with such a salient point? Now they're trying to blame other people. They're trying to blame Oprah and CBS and doubtless Gayle and maybe even Sunshine Sachs. Well, of course, a viper will turn. You know this Aesop fable of the scorpion and the bullfrog? Well, they've hitched a ride across the river and they've stung the scorpion and they're all gonna sink. Poor babies. We're going to end this part of it with a comment from a Canadian. Joan Hume says, "As a Canadian, I was so proud of Prime Minister Jean Cretien when he refused to join in the Iraq War. He was ridiculed for it when he said he needed to see proof. He said something like, 'The proof is the proof, and when I see the proof, then it is the proof.' He got the last laugh since he was right." Yes, he did get the last laugh, and I am very happy to acknowledge the fact that he was right. When people are going to war, it can't be on a wing and a prayer, and it can't be on speculation. It has to be on substance. It's not only the expedient way, it's also the moral way. Well, I am now going to invite Mark Sykes, the grandson of Sir Mark Sykes of the famous Sykes-Picot line, who is an old friend of mine and, in fact, an older friend of the Argyll family than of mine, and who will tell us about how my brother-in-law, Ian, the 12th Duke of Argyll, literally tried to murder him, and how the murder was prevented by the vigilance of a third party. I mean, there are some things that you can't make up. And Mark was saying to me that he thought it might be a good thing for there to be a record of the fact that little Ian was, if not almost as bad, maybe even worse than his father. So, without further ado, Mark is going to come and join us, and we are going to rock and roll, shall we say? Okie dokes. Thanks. Oh, Mark.
Yes.
I have a treat in store for everybody, because you are going to tell us about how my dastardly brother-in-law literally tried to murder.
This happened in 1949 when we were both 12, and in 1949, the years after the war, it was very hard to have a foreign holiday because you weren't allowed to take more than £25 per person out of the country, or it may have been even less. That today is £500, but it still wasn't enough. And my parents were quite close friends of Big Ian and the previous Duchess to Margaret, Wee Wee. And in 1949, they lent my parents their very beautiful house in Biarritz in France, on the coast, with the proviso that they could also leave their older son Ian there as well for the summer, which seemed a sensible idea as we were both the same age. So we duly set forth, took the train down to Biarritz. Very agreeable journey, exciting for me, first time out of England. And we arrived at this very charming house, and there was little Ian, introduced, got on very well, and we had an absolutely wonderful time. Ian and I used to go down to the beach every day, and we made friends with some French children of our own age, and we had ice creams and splashed about in the sea and had a thoroughly good holiday. About a week before we were due to go home, something very, very strange happened to me. Now, I don't really remember all that much about it, because one moment I was splashing happily in the sea, and the next thing I remembered, I was on the beach being pummeled an artificial respiration, which saved my life, and then bundled into an ambulance and taken off to the local hospital. What had happened was that little Ian had jumped on my back in the sea, in the water, and had held me under the water because he got at me from behind and shoved me underneath until I passed out. And had it not been for a very observant young French lifeguard on the beach who rushed in and saved me, stopped it, I would not be here today to tell the tale. We, of course, all thought it had been some kind of natural accident in the ocean, but then in the evening, the young French lifeguard came round to the villa and spoke to my father and told him what had happened. And he said, Ce jeune marquis, this young Count de Marquis, which was what little Ian was at that time, he was the Marquis of Lorne, and he told my parents everything. He was a very good young man because my father tried to give him, a substantial financial reward for kind of what he'd done. He said, no, that was my job. I don't need anything. Thank you very much. And in the evening, I was brought back from the hospital, and a few days after that, we all went back to England. I didn't know anything about this for quite some time after. My parents did not tell me at the time. They told me maybe 6 months after. And years later, I saw Ian, who by that time was the Duke himself, and I can even remember where I saw him. It was at a cocktail party given at the Lansdowne Club by somebody called Charles MacArthur Hardy, who was a very social Australian. And I saw him, that's him. I went up to him, I said, "You're Ian Argyll?" He said, yes. And so I said who I was, and he said, "Oh, yes," he said, "I remember. We had a very jolly holiday in the south of France, all together, Candian." I said, "Yes, to me, have you any idea why?" And all he said, not very originally, was, "Well, it must have seemed like a good idea at the time," which was not really a satisfactory explanation. So,
but he obviously remembered it.
Yes. And it was a very strange occurrence. My only other connection with that whole divorce case was, of course, through my very long friendship with Count Douglas Fairbanks Jr. And I saw again in the papers last weekend some apparently well-informed journalist that said, "Oh yes, the Headless Man was Count Douglas Fairbanks." Well, it wasn't, because I knew Count Douglas since the 1960s until the time he died, which was in the late 80s, I think, as far as I remember. And we frequently talked about that. He said he absolutely didn't, and I knew him well enough that if he had done, he'd have told me. So he didn't.
Well, I know he didn't, because Margaret also said that it wasn't him.
Yeah.
And in fact, she said that she never had an affair with him. Her friend was Mary Lee.
That's what Douglas said, and both kind of Mary Lee, that's how I originally knew Douglas, because kind of Mary Lee had been married before Douglas to someone who was a friend of mine in those years called Huntington Hartford, who I think you also knew.
Yes,
and
who was the A&P heir to those
yes.
Americans who will remember who Huntington Hartford was.
Yes. And so, yes, it was very strange to see all those things on the television again.
Yes. What did you think of the programme?
Well, I quite enjoyed it, but it I didn't know Margaret, of course, so I'm not kind of qualified to judge, but I did think that the lady who acted her, I understand she's also acted the Queen, and it did slightly seem as though she was still acting the Queen, I rather thought.
Yes, but Margaret was very grand.
Was she?
Yes.
Oh, so that was
grand.
probably right.
Well, in fact, she was far too exuberant for Margaret and far too uncontained.
Oh, really?
Because Margaret was very measured. Always very measured. Also, they got the style wrong, because Margaret's style was pristine and exacting and very dramatic and very impactful. And it was it was a down-market version of what an upmarket person should be, while Margaret was the really upmarket version of what an upmarket person should be. And on that note, my dear Mark, thank you so much.
It's been my pleasure, as always.
Mates, let's rock and roll. Well, I hope you have enjoyed this. I hope you enjoyed the little foray with Mark, who actually, as soon as everything got shut down, pointed out to me that he had another great story that he should have told involving my father-in-law and mother-in-law, when my father-in-law... Well, I shouldn't laugh because it's not really funny. Resorted to physical violence in public against my mother-in-law. If you would like to hear that story, let me know and I will ask him to come back and tell it to us. Okay? Thank you so much. God bless. I hope you have enjoyed this. If you have, please like, share, subscribe, press the notification bell, and please keep the questions coming in. This can't be done without you. God bless and goodbye.